Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador suggests a pause in relations with Spain after denouncing that companies from the European country obtained contracts with previous governments which put the country's strategic resources at risk. In Bolivia, the committee promoting the 2019 Coup trial demanded the inclusion of sedition, conspiracy, and terrorism charges in the judicial case against former de facto President Jeanine Añez. Iran reaffirmed its willingness to reach an agreement to rescue the nuclear deal signed with Western powers in 2015 and stressed the urgency for Western countries to lift their sanctions. Hi, this is From the South. I'm your news anchor, Diego Martin. From the teleSUR studios in Havana, we begin with the news. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador proposed a pause in Mexico's relations with Spain, at least until the end of his six-year term, as he considers that Spanish companies have acted advantageously under the protection of the political power. The pause is, let's give ourselves time to respect each other and for them, Spain, not to see us as a land of conquest. We do want to have good relations with all governments, with all the peoples of the world, but we don't want to be robbed. It was a conspiracy at the top.
Una promiscuidad económica, política, en la cúpula.
An economic and political promiscuity at the top of the Mexican and Spanish governments.
Pero como 3 sexenios seguidos.
But it was like 3 presidential terms in a row. Mexico bore the brunt. They plundered us.
Llevaba la peor parte. Nos saqueaban. Vale más darnos un tiempo.
It is better to take some time, a pause, maybe when the government changes.
A lo mejor ya cuando cambie el gobierno,
relations will be reestablished, and I hope when I'm no longer here that they will not be the same as they were before.
De que no fuesen igual como eran antes.
And Perus President Pedro Castillo appointed a new cabinet, the 4th since he came to power 6 months ago, including the replacement of the last prime minister who lasted just 3 days in office. Now, Castillo's 6 months in office have been marked by setbacks and internal struggles within the government, as well as attacks from the opposition, which conducted a failed attempt to impeach him. A week ago, the head of the state appointed his 3rd cabinet after the surprise resignation of Prime Minister Amir Lok due to disagreements over promotions in the police force. In her stead, the president appointed lawyer and parliamentarian Hector Valera Pinto, who was left in the hot seat after the media reported that his wife and daughter had denounced him in 2016 for alleged domestic violence issues. Since 2017, Peru has experienced instability after political leaders began pushing vacancy motions in Congress to abruptly get rid of presidents. The executive secretary of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Agreement, ALBA TCP, Sacha Laurenti, and the Chinese ambassador to Venezuela, Li Baorong, held a meeting on Tuesday. Both officials advocated the need to defend multilateralism in international relations. Laurenti on Twitter disclosed several details of the meeting, also stressing the importance of abiding by the principles and purposes of the Charter of the United Nations as quoted as an international treaty, an instrument of the international law that is binding for the member states of the United Nations organization. On Tuesday, Honduras' Foreign Affairs Minister Eduardo Reina and Human Rights Minister Natalie Roque announced that the InterAmerican Commission on Human Rights agreed to investigate the Honduran state for its involvement in the coup d'etat against President Manuel Zelaya back in 2009. As the complaint's bearer, former President Zelaya must provide evidence to support these facts and the claim of the participation of the Judiciary and National Congress in his capture, illegal removal, and expulsion from the country. Once the human rights body finishes the investigation, it will attempt to reconcile a settlement between Zelaya and the state. If both sides do not manage to come to terms, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights will begin a trial. This policy is part of President Madagascar's strategy to recover the rule of law and guarantee that the human rights of Hondurans are never violated again. In the capital of Colombia, a displaced social leader suffered an attack. Her case added to the increasing numbers in that country as a result of the violence. Let's hear more of the stories.
She is Amparo, a social leader from the department of Bolivar. She is in the capital due to the numerous threats and attacks that forced her to leave her home. She represents the fight to recover the land taken from the farmer, which is why she had a protection detail assigned to her.
The risk is for many leaders and human rights defenders who raise their voices to defend water, to defend peace. Today, here in Colombia, leaders who raise their voices to say we want peace are sent to the neighborhood of Los Acostados, or they are forcing us out of our homes.
This is how the vehicle of this leader was left. 8 bullet impacts in her armored car after armed men blocked the way of her transport. When she was traveling to her home, her escort reaction made the criminals flee and abandon the vehicle in which they were traveling. The police found evidence that may be useful to the investigation. The leader assures that it was an attack and not a robbery, as the police claimed.
For me and our escort, it was an attack. They wanted to kill us. Thank God they didn't achieve their goals, but they wanted to kill us. There are sufficient elements for the investigation. It is a concern for us as human rights defenders that the police quickly wash their hands and say it was a robbery when there are enough elements to look into other things.
This situation takes place at a time when the country is experiencing a steady increase in violence that has left to date 15 social leaders murdered and 18 massacres, just weeks before the legislative election. Undeniably, we must continue to demand protection and guarantees for the lives of leaders assassinated throughout the country. In Amparo's cases, guarantees for her life, for her family, for her social actions and her survival, not only here in Bogotá but also in the south of Bolivar, which is her hometown. Human rights and social organizations claim that Iván Duque's government failed to provide security to the territories and to guarantee the leaders' lives as a consequence of a non-implementation of the peace agreements. They claim that comprehensive state services should have reached the territories and not only the military component, which increases even more the conflict that keeps the war going in the region.
Brazil's Chamber of Deputies will vote on Wednesday on an urgent bill known as a poison package. The initiative will allow the entry of toxic agrochemicals into the country on a massive scale. It is a combination of several proposals put forward by a special commission, mostly composed of parliamentarians accused of receiving funding from agribusiness. The bill will allow products with a higher carcinogenic potential or that cause health problems to be put into circulation more quickly and without thorough evaluation by health authorities. During the government of Jair Bolsonaro, the release of pesticides for commercial use in Brazil set a record for the presence of plague-controlled substances since 2016, the year in which it was banned by then-President Dilma Rousseff. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, welcome back to From the South. In Bolivia, the committee promoting the 2019 Coup trial demanded the inclusion of sedition, conspiracy, and terrorism charges in the judicial case against former de facto President Jeanine Añez. With 1 day to go before the hearing, the representatives of the committee announced a visit to prosecutor Juan Lanchipa in the city of Sucre to inquire about the slowness of the process. Also, they highlighted the importance of the prosecution of Añez before the Bolivian justice system, which is still pending. The initiative seeks as well to prosecute the current governor of Santa Cruz, Luis Fernando Camacho, and the leader of the Citizen Community Party, Carlos Mesa, as well as other public and military officials who participated in the coup d'etat against Evo Morales. In Bolivia, despite 2 laws sanctioning political harassment, the country has not yet overcome male violence against women in public office. Our correspondent Freddy Morales tells us the details.
This stated that the problem is in the mind of society, in the mind of the male, in a male chauvinist society. In their mind, men think that because of the strength that men have or because they have not had the same opportunities, women think that women are inferior. It is a social construction. Our parents and the environment often tell us that this is the way it should be. And the political harassment women suffer is not necessarily due to a lack of training for public service in government positions.
Women are trained. In 32 years, Sedima has trained more than 48,000 indigenous women in social rights and political leadership. These women have been left aside in the organizations because they were dangerous and questioned what men were doing.
The first law adopted in the country against harassment and political violence, which a decade later is still difficult to put into practice, came after an assassination.
A councilwoman elected in the 2012 regional elections initially made a series of accusations against her fellow council members. We are talking about Juana Guispe. Her fellow councilmen did not summon her to the council meetings. They pressured her to resign. She resisted. She resisted all the harassment she was experiencing from the men until one day the body of Councilwoman Juana Guispe appeared lying in a corner of a province.
The murder of Councilwoman Juana Quispe pushed through the first law against political violence, but it was not enough. Another complementary one was approved, and it is still not enough.
The Supreme Electoral Court and the Gender Unity Office registered 285 cases, of which 130 are complaints, and there are 155 resignations. In Chuquisaca, we have 1 complaint under investigation, and there are 5 resignations. In La Paz, there are 13 complaints and 23 resignations. In Cochabamba, we have 2 complaints and 32 resignations. In Oruro, there is 1 complaint and 21 resignations.
Data revealed that women elected by popular vote, when faced by pressure from their male colleagues, prefer to resign rather than fight for their rights. The most frequent pressure, according to the reports, is that man elected as a substitute for a woman pressures her to resign to occupy her position. The pressure might be psychological, sexual, or physical violence.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
In the United States, protesters across Minneapolis continue to demand justice for Amir Lok, who was shot and killed by one of that city's police officers last week during a pre-dawn raid. Demonstrators took to the streets and arrived at City Hall demanding accountability for those involved. A Minneapolis police officer last week shot and killed Lok, a 22-year-old black man, while conducting a search warrant in connection to a homicide investigation that Lok was not involved in. A suspect in that investigation was arrested on Monday, and however, the teen was identified as Lok's cousin. The youth was booked at the Ramsey County Juvenile Detention Center on second-degree murder in relation to the killing of Otis Elder. This crime has caused outrage nationwide, and especially in Minneapolis, where the murder of George Floyd by police less than 2 years ago exposed the intense environment of mistrust between the community and the law enforcement agents.
Time and time again, black youth are being murdered across the nation. Our message today is that we need to protect young black lives. We are humans, we deserve to live, and we have hopes and dreams. Our demands consist of banning all no-knock warrants, full transparency and a full overhaul and demilitarization of Minneapolis Police Department, full review of MPD and SWAT practices, resignation of Police Chief Interim, Huffman and Mayor Fry, accountability of Judge Peter Cahill, the same judge for the Chauvin trial that led to the no-knock warrant, termination of Mark Hanneman, the police officer who murdered Amir Lok in a matter of 9 seconds.
The World Health Organization urged rich countries Wednesday to pay their fair share of the money needed for its plan to conquer COVID-19 by urgently contributing $16 billion. The World Health Organization said the rapid cash injection into its Access to COVID Tools Accelerator could finish off COVID as a global health emergency this year. ACT-A, the WHO calls it, is aimed at developing, producing, procuring, and distributing tools to tackle the pandemic, namely vaccines, tests, treatments, and personal protective equipment. The scheme needs $16 billion from wealthy nations to close the immediate financing gap, with the rest to be self-funded by middle-income countries. ACT-A has come up with a new fair share financing model on how much each of the world's wealthy countries should contribute based on the size of their national economy and what they would gain from a faster recovery of the global economy itself.
Vaccine inequity is the biggest moral failure of our times, and people and countries are paying the price.
We know that unless COVID-19 tools become available to all, it is no mystery, infection rates will stay high, and patients, health systems, and economies will suffer. And new viral strains may evolve, posing a threat to all of us once again. So investing in ACT-A is the mutual interest of all countries.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi, welcome back to From the South. Iran reaffirmed its willingness to reach an agreement to rescue the nuclear deal signed with Western powers in 2015. The Iranian delegation that participated on Tuesday in the round of talks in Vienna expressed its willingness to resume the nuclear deal. However, it reaffirmed that the talks will not make any progress as long as the West does not take concrete actions. Tehran's delegation insisted on the need for the unilateral U.S. sanctions imposed on the country to be lifted in order for the negotiations to reach a satisfactory conclusion. In this sense, the Russian representation warned that time is running out. In 2018, the United States, under the administration of former President Donald Trump, unilaterally abandoned the deal with the purpose of imposing coercive measures against Iran. A double missile attack carried out by Israel against Syrian territory killed 1 soldier and injured 5 others. Now, the attack was carried out by Tel Aviv planes from the airspace of Lebanon on the occupied Syrian Golan. The government of Damascus explained that the Israeli aggression took place in the vicinity of the capital and that the deceased was a captain whose anti-aircraft defense battery was hit by a shell. Officials also said that the attack caused damage to buildings and other civilian property. Syrian military authorities stated that some missiles were intercepted and confirmed that a Russian cargo plane was forced to circle over the Mediterranean Sea to avoid the line of fire. Now, today, the United States Representative for Climate Change, John Kerry, arrived in Mexico to analyze the energy policy of both countries and the transition to the so-called clean energies. The envoy stated that Joe Biden's administration fully respects the sovereignty of Mexico, which is currently discussing the constitutional reform in electricity matters proposed by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The intention is to strengthen and modernize the state-owned Federal Electricity Commission and reverse the effects of liberalization that have so far only benefited private companies. López Obrador trusts that there will be a reflection on the relevance of strengthening competences. One of the main concerns of the United States is that these changes will not generate sufficient profits for the market, this being the most important point in the work agenda for the U.S. Madagascar's State Disaster Relief Agency said Wednesday the death toll from Cyclone Batsirai rose to 80 as information continued to filter in from areas of the country that were badly affected. The cyclone slammed into the Indian Ocean island late on Saturday, knocking down houses and electricity lines as it battered the southeastern coast until it moved away late on Sunday, leaving 91,000 people with destroyed or damaged homes. Batsirai was the nation's second destructive storm in 2 weeks after Cyclone Anna killed 55 people and displaced 130,000 in a different area of the country further north. The World Food Program said Batsirai had made the situation worse by destroying crops of rice, fruits, and vegetables that were just 2 weeks away from harvest. Bolivia's Defense Deputy Minister Juan Calvi-Montes reported that more than 20,000 people were affected by recent rains nationwide, warning that flooding could continue in the upcoming days. Damages were recorded in 48 municipalities where over 7,000 hectares of crops and around 900 houses were affected. The northern region of La Paz was one of the most badly hit areas due to the rivers overflowing, landslides, and obstructions in urban areas. Calvi-Montes stated that hundreds of families were relocated in shelters in the wait for construction works in their homes. The Defense Deputy Minister also announced an allocation of a $9 million budget, which will be distributed among the Defense Ministry, the Rural Development Ministry, and the Environment Ministry to conduct the recovery operations. We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.